Hello. Hello, hello. So, just so you all know, I cannot see you, but you can see me. I'm Tracy Rubel. I'm the first nut that decided to sit out on a public sidewalk several years ago and start listening. And I'm here to talk a little bit about this exciting opportunity that ChangeX has presented. Now, you may say, well, why can't you just post the URL for these grants? And I wanted to say, well, the reason why is the URL is not live yet. And I'm talking about it ahead of time because the funds are delivered on a first come, first serve basis. And so, what I wanted to say is that I'm presenting this ahead of time because I'm going on vacation tomorrow. So, in a perfect world, I wouldn't present this until there's a live URL, but I'm going on vacation. I'll be gone when the URL's live. So if you're watching right now, I can't necessarily see you, but if you're watching and you want to tell us a little bit about yourself in the chat and who and where you are and something about yourself or your work, I'd love to hear. And I'll say a little bit more about myself in a second, but this is going to be about a 35-minute presentation. And what we'll cover is I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sidewalk Talk. For some of you that are going to watch this live or in the recording, this may be your first introduction to Sidewalk Talk. And I want to share a little bit about Sidewalk Talk, how it started, and why in the heck we're promoting this in Europe when this was an initiative that started in 2015 in San Francisco. Hi, Julia. Welcome from Melbourne. Hi, Julia. I think you're friends with Amy Rosen. And hi, Doreen. I think you're also... Now, Doreen, are you in the UK? I think I remember looking at your LinkedIn profile. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the actual steps for applying for the grant, but I just got news. So I was a minute late showing up because there's still changes going on the back end on Paramount and ChangeX's side. They're pushing back the grant application again by 1 week because they're still finalizing things. So what's really important are two things: that you do go sign up at the Sidewalk Talk website to our mailing list so that we'll notify you as soon as that URL is live. And you can also sign up to be notified via the ChangeX website, but I'll say more about that. Welcome. It's so nice to... Oh, hi, Cassandra in the UK. Nice to see you too. Okay, so I actually took notes for you, and I'm actually kind of happy to have you say your names because I was feeling a little nervous, but Julia, Doreen, and Cassandra, you just made me feel like a little less alone and less nervous, so thank you for saying hi. I appreciate that. I peppered a lot of photographs in for a reason because I think it's really fun. My favorite thing, so if you all end up doing this, I want you to know I get really excited to see what fresh ideas that you all come up with. Like Zeev made these brand new signs at our San Francisco chapter, the white ones that say what's on your mind. And now he shared those with everyone, and now a lot of chapter leaders say, oh, I want to print that sign too. They're only in English, unfortunately. So if you're in France or Germany, we don't have those in German. But I did hand letter them in German for our German chapter. So a little bit about why I started Sidewalk Talk. You know, I'm somebody who is a little bit rebellious anyway. When I read a psychological theory, or I read statistics about people and identities, I kind of don't believe any of it. I have to go talk to people, and a lot of them. I really like to hear people's stories and hear from people directly. And in 2014 in particular, there was a lot going on in my town. Lots of gun violence, specifically discrimination, polarization, and mental health was still not quite as as it is today. People were not necessarily getting the help that they needed. And so with 28 therapists in San Francisco, we went out on one day and we thought this was going to be a one-time project. And then the press got wind of it. And I started getting all kinds of calls from people saying, can we bring this here? And then it was LA that called me first. And then up in Canada, actually, was a chapter. And there's still a woman up there that's doing it on a high school campus. Washington, D.C., and Austin, Texas were our first chapters. Then I thought, oh, I better build a nonprofit around this. But we've never been a nonprofit that had a an executive director that was paid six figures. We're scrappy. Julia knows Amy Rosen, who has been our volunteer coordinator. I have a picture of Amy on the slide deck. What I really learned is that I actually like scrappy. You're going to have to like scrappy if you want to be here. We're not like the Red Cross where we have tons of programs. We say, here's what we know so far. We're going to hand it off to you and you go play with it and improve on it and make it your own. But at the end of the day, we really believed, and I started to learn, that listening seems like a skill. And I really got that it was a spiritual practice. I'm not particularly good at listening. I'm an anxious over talker. And it has really been a spiritual practice for me to sit and listen to people. The other thing I learned is that I have a lot of bias, and it doesn't matter how much training you get in racial identity or privilege. Look, bias and in-group, out-group dynamics are just things that the human brain does. But some of our research on folks that come out to the sidewalk and listen is they have a reduction in bias, and they're super easeful and non-shaming to themselves at confronting their own bias. Like, I don't have a hard time when someone says, oh, you screwed that up. I'm like, oh, I did. I just don't get ashamed about it anymore because I've done this so long. And I'm like, of course I did, because bias is normal. And I also did learn a lot about, I'm going to say something a little provocative, but I think when you are from the San Francisco, Silicon Valley, we can get a little bit like we think California or San Francisco is the center of the universe. And I've developed a lot of intellectual humility around that. I'm like, oh, turns out we're not. And I've listened all over the world now. And I also did a bus tour across the southern United States after Donald Trump was elected. And I had such an amazing experience meeting people from different parts of the world that speak different languages and that believe different things than me. And so it's hard to say who gets helped. I don't know who gets helped. All I know is that it seems like the person that I get to listen to feels somehow really good about the experience. But I actually get so much from this experience when I am not in a therapist role helping anyone, but really delighting and enjoying someone, I'd love to I guess none of you speak other languages. Do any of you speak any other languages? I can't see how many people are live, so I'm kind of flying blind here. But we had some folks from France and Germany and the Netherlands. Had the secret wish that someone would type in the chat how to say Global Mental Health Day, October 10th in German or French. If you do speak another language and you want to put that in the chat, I would love to know how to say it. This is another way to show intellectual humility. At one of our New York chapters, I went out and listened with them in Manhattan one year, and I think we had 9 listeners, and I said, hey, what languages do you speak? And we had 12 languages spoken just amongst 9 people. So we, on the fly, figured out, it'd be good to have on each person's name tag, I speak Russian, I speak English, and I speak Spanish, right? Or whatever the languages may be. I think I'll say something about this photo too, because you might come up with a crazy idea like this. It's called Sidewalk Talk, but we don't always listen on the sidewalk. And this is an event we were invited to a year after I spoke there, where we actually listened in the foyer of the event. And I've done this 3 times. I did it in New Orleans, I did it in Berkeley, and then this was in San Francisco, where we made these custom signs. And in some instances, we didn't even have to put people there to cover the stations. People self-selected and just sat down and offered to start listening. So let me give you a little bit of information about ChangeX. So here's how this whole thing happened. I did not go seek out money. I did not cold call and ask for grants or seek out money, although I might now because I love this model. So ChangeX is this really interesting platform that is trying to help get money to community-led initiatives that isn't a nonprofit with a big umbrella overhead with a big executive director, and they're trying to funnel the money directly to, for example, you all, to the chapters, to the people in the community doing the work. And so they hunt around and look for organizations that are organized a lot like Sidewalk Talk to give money to. And in this case, Paramount is funding mental health initiatives for the upcoming Global Mental Health Day on October 10th. And we were one of the organizations that they chose. There's two other nonprofits. I don't know who they are that they're giving to, but what ChangeX does is they give money directly to you, and we get a small, tiny bit. We'll get 90 bucks per chapter, but you guys will get between $500 and $700. We're getting the final number. I gave them a budget. 70% of it you'll get on day one, and I'll say this later, and then the rest you'll get after your first event, so that it covers all your startup costs. And I so dig this funding model, so I want to work with them because they're actually doing some interesting stuff for us too. They're localizing some of our materials for us in Spanish, French, and German, which is super great. And they're actually going to background check all of you that apply. We used to have to pay staff to do this. They're taking all of that off of us, so also making us more operationally effective. Isn't this a cool organization? Thanks for saying that. I'm kind of in love with them right now, seriously. And if you have another NGO that would like to be involved with them, you can go check out their website. So here's the steps. This is the piece where you might want to jot down some notes, but remember that this is going to be recorded. So you don't need to feel frantic because this is all going to be recorded. And if you've gone to the Sidewalk Talk website, as soon as the URL is live on the ChangeX website, you will get an email from Sidewalk Talk. So first off, Paramount is focusing on Argentina, Australia, Canada, Chile, France, Germany, Mexico, the Netherlands, Singapore, Spain, and the UK. Now they said focusing. I've said to a couple colleagues of mine that are starting something in India, I said, apply anyway. Hi, Sadaf. There's Sadaf right there. When you get over to the website, and I'm going to show you some screenshots, you're going to fill out, it is ridiculous how easy this is. So I don't want anyone to be biting their nails going, oh my God, this is a big deal. You're going to freak out when you see how much they've thought of you in setting this up. You're going to fill out a simple form that is literally your name, address, and phone number and email. You're going to watch a little video, and they are going to give you a little website URL to help you start recruiting people. So they will make you your own little Sidewalk Talk webpage. It'll help you recruit team members, because what they want ultimately before they give you money is they want to see a plan that you have made for your chapter and a photo of your team. That's one of the ways that they're going to vet you. By the way, this is Ziv Ming Lee. He's a San Francisco chapter leader. A shout out to him because that sign that he's holding, he designed. He is an award-winning illustrator and graphics designer, and he did the entire Sidewalk Talk website for free, including all the custom illustrations. This is kind of how things happen. We call this little person Vic, pronouns they, them. We call them Vic because Vic stands for very into connecting. That's the name of our little mascot. That mascot was donated by a woman named Alicia. She contacted me and said, I had this dream. I made this graphic. I just think it's for you. And she gave it to us. So this is how this project materializes. All right, ready? So we thought that the grant was going to go live on Sunday. Then it moved to Monday. And now it looks like it's moving a week out. This kind of thing happens. You all know this in the nonprofit world. But I'm giving you a taster of what's going to look like when it goes live. It's this beautiful little website that is super easy, lays out all the steps for you, and you click a button that says, Start a Sidewalk Talk chapter. Up above is the ChangeX website. You can already go there and add your name to the mailing list to be notified when the Sidewalk Talk campaign is live, okay? You can find the Sidewalk Talk website right now on their page, but you don't want to submit early until it's live, because if you submit early, you'll have to just resubmit again, okay? Once you click that button, that little screen on the left, it's four pieces of information. Step 2, little tiny questionnaire right there that says, why are you interested in this? And then you'll get an email to your inbox saying, hey, here's your link to your own private page. So I went ahead and went through the process, and this is Sidewalk Talk Heidelberg. So you can actually see the little page, and it looks a little bit like a Facebook page. So you can add events. People can come follow you. Just like Facebook, they can create a ChangeX profile and start following your personal page. This is a way for you to begin building your chapter, right? And begin community organizing your people. Pretty cool, huh? There's going to come a point in time where there's a handoff, where ChangeX says, you've been vetted, you've been approved. Yes, you're going to get the money. And that's when Sidewalk Talk gets notified. And we're told you have an approved chapter leader. And there are 2 steps that you're going to complete directly through Sidewalk Talk. One, we do have a contract because we are fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit called Social Good in Berkeley, California. And we have to have you sign a chapter leader agreement because they want to be protected. American companies tend to have a lot of these things because we live in a litigious country. So it's a lot of T's and C's. It is translated into, it's in English, but it's been translated into French. It's been translated into German, and it's been translated into Spanish, so you won't have to do anything. There are some aspects of our stuff that is not translated, but we have added Google Translate to the top left-hand corner of our website. So anybody among your volunteers that comes to the Sidewalk Talk website can literally do a drop down, and that website is now converted into, I think, 100 different languages. The second thing that you're going to get after you sign that chapter leader agreement is you're going to get a chapter leader dashboard login. And that's what it looks like. It's not fancy. Remember the old days we used to call them portals. It's a portal where it has things like liability releases that you might want to have your listeners sign. You don't have to, but we recommend it. Graphics, we give you all the graphics, and you can either order shirts from us or you can order and have shirts printed yourself. We have all kinds of how-to videos, specific Q's and A's, everything that you would need to get started. The one thing that you need to know is that this dashboard is also only in English, and to get it translated, you need to log in through Google, right-click, and it'll translate it in Google. If you're using Safari, I don't know how to do that in Safari, so you'll have to educate me, but this is how we've set it up. We did upload all of the English-oriented videos onto YouTube, which also does auto-translation into those captions can be translated into other languages too. Here's where I'm going to fall on my sword a little bit. I have really been clear that I'm not going to be the jet fuel for this project. You all are the jet fuel for this project. I like to listen, and I really like learning from you. So I think early days, I thought, oh, I'm supposed to be this kind of leader, and I burned myself out, and my husband and kids missed me a lot because I was doing a lot. What I like to do is I like to share everything that I know how to do with you, give you access points to the community should you need help. But we don't have any paid staff behind the scenes. So I want to set these expectations that you really do need to be a self-starter. We're going to tell you everything that you need to know. Yes, we do have one part-time paid person who manages our back-end database and automations and our money and all that stuff. Other than that, and our money is all handled by a fiscal sponsor, so we don't actually have access to the money. We have a chapter leader Facebook group. Right now there's 43 chapter leaders in that group that are happy to answer questions. And we've literally created a how to listen on the sidewalk guide that we actually give out right now to people that just want to go listen on the sidewalk with a friend. So we do let people go listen on the sidewalk now without a chapter. Chapters are for people that want to community organize and have something bigger and want to actually sometimes call their chapter Sidewalk Talk Goof to Goo Counseling, for example. Sadaf is on the call listening in India, and she runs a psychotherapy clinic. So you could have Sidewalk Talk, your psychotherapy clinic. Let me go back. There was something else I was going to say there, and I can't remember. I'm going faster than I thought I would, which is great. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. These guides on the left, it's a 4-page guide. The How to Listen on the Sidewalk guide is also being translated into French, German, and Spanish through ChangeX, through this grant. We've never had materials localized before. So just wanted to also set those expectations that these materials on the left, the How to Listen on the Sidewalk guide, will also be translated for you. So this is one of my favorite questions. And Julia, there's Amy. So Amy Rosen is our volunteer coordinator. Amy sat in the room, in the high rise, in San Francisco. I think it was October of 2014 when we started planning this. It was a really hot day. We were sweating our buns off. 28 therapists talking about every possible thing that could go wrong. And I do want to say something now that I'm remembering this memory. People get really focused on all the things that could go wrong. We've actually planned for a lot of the crisis stuff and we put it in that document. But it's been 9.5 years now, and we've had 2 situations that were emergency situations. So I want to say, don't let negativity bias take over your brain. We really are prepared, and you're going to find that people are much gooder than the news and media would have. Much gooder? Did I just say gooder? I did. Much kinder and more loving than the news media or social media would ever have you know. I have been more hopeful about the world when I go sit and listen on the sidewalk. And one of my favorite podcast interviews on the Sidewalk Talk podcast is with a colleague of mine who specializes in depression. He said, what I love about Sidewalk Talk is that if one of my depressed clients is walking down the street, even if they never sat down to talk to your listeners, you're already disconfirming a story in their mind that they're alone and that nobody cares about them, because it's demonstrably true that they're not alone because you're sitting there with a chair available to listen to them. And that's really touching to me. It's really touching to me. So I do want to sort of sit in a little imaginary moment for a second. I love doing this. I wish we were on a Zoom so we could all do this together, and I'm sorry we're not. But do for a second, really do this deeply. Imagine if every human on the planet carried really deeply in their bones that they mattered. Just feel that deeply, like that there wasn't a person around that didn't know that. And then I want you to imagine that people knew deeply that their humanity mattered and that there were people that were really interested in their lived experience. Like, feel that down in here. And I'd be curious, how do you think, if that were true, that would impact collective mental health? If you'd be willing to type it in the chat, I'll pop it up onto the screen if I can. If we actually created this experience inside of people just by having listeners on sidewalks, how does that impact collective mental health, do you think? I mean, this is what I'm after. This is what I'm after. So that's the end, but now we're going to move on to questions. I might tell a couple stories here. On the left, this is a small number of the people that were actually there that day. We had a men listening event. So 3 women came out and were the leaders of the event. Actually, it's 4 women and then 1 woman with her daughter, but 22 men showed up to hold space for survivors of sexual abuse. We didn't have a lot of talkers that day take us up. It kind of didn't matter because people were pretty moved to see 22 men out on the sidewalk holding space for women. It was really touching. And then this is Dr. Narendra's chapter in Kathmandu, Nepal. And I don't know, Sadaf, if you've gotten in touch with him, but his chapter is really, really relaunching again. And then I should talk about this more. We got funded by the Human Rights Institute and the Islamic Society to do a bus tour across the South in the United States. So we did that for a week. And it was really profound to be traveling through southern states that I'd never been to and listen to people that think very differently than me. And again, it was really hopeful to me. Okay, I have a question from Sadaf. The role clarity, what Sidewalk Talk will and won't do. So I'm going to, even though I don't see a specific question, I do want to say that we are not mental health therapists providing mental health treatment. I really love the grandmother benches project in Africa, where they're trained in CBT therapy and they're providing interventive treatment. That's not sidewalk talk. What we're doing, our motto, I borrow from Pema Chodron's quote that compassion happens between equals. We see ourselves as equal to the person sitting across from us. And we treat the practice of listening as a practice, not that we're moving into a helper role. I'm just, as a therapist, somebody who's very interested in power. And for sure, I'm playing with power when I do this project, stepping out of the therapist role, going, what's it like for me to not be in a role of therapist and meet this person human to human? So I'm always experimenting with that, right? A couple other chapter leader-y things. When we organize, you might wonder, like, for example, for that men listening event, well, why were there 4 women there? Well, we always have listeners and we always have a greeter. And a greeter has a really super important role. Thanks, Cassandra. Thanks for being here. The greeter always has a really important role. The role of the greeter is that they're actually keeping the space safe. So they're looking around to make sure that, there isn't anything dangerous going on. One time one of the greeters said, I think we're a little too close to the traffic. We're too close to the street. We need to move further back. So the greeter kind of makes those calls. Sometimes we'll have someone that's a little disruptive. So the greeter will try to move them along. And the greeter will also answer questions. And sometimes, actually this happened in Amsterdam, we were full the minute we put our chairs out, the whole time. And so a greeter would come along and say, hey, tap you on the shoulder. It's been 10 minutes. We have someone waiting when you're complete. And it sort of helps the listener wrap up the conversation. But the greeter will also keep track of safety. So when I was listening in the South, I had a talker want to convert me to their religion. And I couldn't sort of move it along. And so the greeter comes over and sort of steps in and sort of helps reaffirm a boundary, for example. We had another person that was really in a mental health crisis. They weren't needing emergency services to be called, and we talk about how to handle that very simply and easily. But it seemed like the listener might have been a little overwhelmed. So the greeter said, hey, I've got another listener. Why don't you tag team and the both of you listen to this person together so that nobody feels overwhelmed? So I'm reading something from Sadaf. She says, I feel it might be helpful to step outside of their own story, which, as painful as they are also a self-serving shield. Yeah, I think all of our stories can be. And for me, that's what's exciting about this practice of listening. I'll tell you a funny story about that, Sadaf. I was listening to a man. He had such a great experience. He said, can I just sit down right now and listen? And well, I'm the founder, so I can break all the rules. I said, yeah, here's a t-shirt. I threw a t-shirt on him. He sat down next to me and he just joined in. I do also want to say that we partnered with the Lava May, which offered pop-up care villages for people living on the street. And half of the listeners at the pop-up care village were also people living on the street. We sat side by side with them. There was no difference between us because some people had a house and some people didn't. So we are unconventional that way. And you do not need to be a therapist. A few things about the training. We give you some basics. You could either train your listeners yourself. There's some basic tips on how to listen on the Sidewalk Guide. One of the ways we fund Sidewalk Talk is we invite people to donate $10 to watch some training videos. And then we have a real fancy pants live 11-week training that talks about embodiment and nervous system stuff and trauma and boundaries and bias. And that's a $500 thing. We usually do that once or twice a year, and then we end up funding Sidewalk Talk for the whole year with that initiative, which is great. That was all I came prepared to talk about. It's a very quick and dirty, here's how you set it up. I'm not telling you how to be a chapter leader because you're going to get that from the chapter leader portal, but I'd like to know, are there any other questions before I sign off? I did like what Doreen, I like this. This was the answer to the question, what do you imagine would happen if we all felt that our story mattered. It's pretty cool. Any other questions? You could help me even if you don't have a question. Can you think of questions that somebody else might have that I didn't cover, that you already know the answer to because you know me? No? Okay. So I'm going to remind you to please sign up for the Sidewalk Talk mailing list so that you will get an email when the grant site is live. I do want to say that we cannot guarantee that everybody's going to get money. The reason why I did this presentation ahead of time is because I did not want folks to not know it was going live and miss out on the money, because I leave on vacation in the morning, so I won't be here. So you all will have to rely on going to the ChangeX website and creating an account there, and or going to the Sidewalk Talk website and making sure that you're on the email list. So that's it. Sweet and easy. If there's anything else that you need, the best thing to do is to sign up and enter into the Facebook group. You can ask all the questions you want there. And I am so hopeful and excited that for you folks that are starting, I'm going to learn so much from you, because I do every time. I love watching what you all create. So thank you so much, everyone.